Welcome to Pacific Northwest Mike Check, where Mike Connolly, owner of Windermere Real Estate Central Inc. in Kirkland, shares his lifetime of experiences as a successful businessman, real estate broker, and Pacific Northwest enthusiast. Throughout this podcast, Mike will be interviewing passionate experts in the industry who will give you a new perspective on the world of real estate, business, and life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first episode of Pacific Northwest Mike Check. My name is Sophia Nixarian, and I will be the moderator of this podcast. I'm so excited to get started. I've been working with Mike Connolly here for a while to get this podcast up and running, and we're looking forward to getting to know a lot about business, real estate, and your life, Mike. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. Mike Connolly. I own a Windermere real estate office in the Puget Sound area of Seattle with my wife, BJ, who's also a broker in the office, and we work together. We're a good team.
Yeah, you guys are. You're a lot of fun to work with. So I help with the marketing in Mike's office. So we do different blogs, newsletters, specifically for their We Are Kirkland brand. So we thought that a podcast could be a lot of fun to just add a whole visual and audio element to our We Are Kirkland brand. So today, the point of today is to get to know Mike better. So throughout this podcast, we'll be interviewing different people from all over the country in different areas of business, entrepreneurship, real estate. And today we really just want to get to know Mike and get to know really the man behind the mic, the namesake of this podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions. And here we go. So the first question is, you were an avid rower in college. So you went to the University of Washington.
Correct.
And what kind of impact did that have on your life?
Well, it was like anybody just getting into college. You were going from lesser pace to a very, very fast pace in education, and then going into a Division I sport. It raised the bar considerably. So, but the impact it had, I think, on all rowers at the University of Washington was the element of mastery and the expectation of exceptional performance. So you didn't show up, whether it was to practice and certainly not to a race, unless you had exceptional performance right at the top of your thoughts.
You say the element of mastery. So what did that look like on a day-to-day basis? Were you constantly practicing? I mean, like you said, it's a tough school. You still had schoolwork. So what were you doing to get through to that element of mastery?
Well, it was imposed upon you. So, I go back to, and I think it was in the book, The Slight Edge. And I believe the quote, and it's from Bruce Lee, is, I don't fear the man that has practiced 10,000 kicks. I fear the man that has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And his whole approach was, his life's approach was mastery and what that's all about. And that continual, consistent practice of your art. And in that case, it was rowing. Now it's real estate.
That's awesome. And you actually met your wife, BJ, rowing at the University of Washington, correct?
That's right. Yeah, she was on the women's rowing crew, and actually was right in the middle of Title IX in the mid to late 70s. So, she was a big part of that change in women's athletics.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So you mastered rowing, you met BJ, and you're like, okay, I'm going to start, get started with Windermere. Or, what was that path? How did that happen from?
Yeah, there were a few steps in between, Sophia. So right out of college, I graduated from the School of Forestry at the University of Washington.
Wow.
So my first job was doing some pretty hard stuff in the woods of Southwest Washington. I worked for a company called International Paper Company. And so I was, if anybody knows that world, I was setting chokers, I was grading logs, just working in the logging industry. And I got to a level of work with another company, and we were traveling the greater part of Western United States, and it was a big, huge timber exchange. But that was also an element of mastery. We were hopping on and off airplanes, helicopters in the woods, and
Wow.
had quite the experience that way. But then the road turned again, and I decided that was not the thing. So I learned how to drive a long haul truck, and so I was on the road for about 3 years. And it was really my dad who said, you really ought to get serious about life here. And my dad was a commercial real estate broker and invited me into his office. So that's kind of where my real estate career began. And it was a small little office. About 3 years into it, the owners of the office offered to sell it to BJ and I. And so BJ and I became Juanita Realty. It was just a little itty bitty office in North Kirkland. And lo and behold, a fellow by the name of Don Deasy from Windermere Real Estate comes knocking on our door. And Windermere at that time, I think, had 17 offices. And they said, you guys kind of walk and talk like us. Here's what we're all about. And they explained really an incredible partnership and a system of people that owned offices called Windermere Real Estate. And about 6 months later, we became the 18th office in what is now 360 offices in 11 states and about 8,000 brokers.
Wow. I was going to ask, how many are there now? So number 18, go number 18.
Yeah, go 18.
That's awesome. Well, you say walk and talk like us. The Windermere, he showed up and said, you walk and talk like us. What does that mean? Walk and talk like Windermere?
Yeah, really good question. So, I mean, there's a lot of great companies out there. Windermere is a great company. But Windermere in that time and still today put a little different twist to it. And the mantra was, hey, we're about family, community, and relationships. And the people that we associate with, we approach them with hiring great people, train them well, pay them well, and then we get out of their way. And it's been a successful formula for a lot of years within the Windermere system.
Yeah, that's great. And Windermere does amazing things for the community as well in that area. The Windermere Foundation, I know every year they do a lot as well. So that's great. And I think anyone who has worked within Windermere or for someone in, as an agent or a broker, Windermere is really a great company to be a part of. And you've grown that into something very unique. So you've taken Windermere Kirkland and made it into a whole brand. We are Kirkland. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So you've been fairly instrumental in helping us with that, obviously, in marketing our mantra out to the world. But We Are Kirkland, from a real estate perspective, was to really bring to the public at a much higher level of us being a resource and the hyper-local experts in Kirkland, Washington, and the east side of Lake Washington real estate. Not that we don't go other places, but we have a concentration within the community and building relationships with businesses in and throughout Kirkland and the east side. So, we come to work, Sophia, with a mentality of service. I don't really look at my group of brokers as salespeople. I look at them as people that open up their door every morning and say, "Who can I serve today?" So that's kind of the We Are Kirkland way, is getting out, helping people, not tying ourselves to any of the results, but just building great relationships. And along with that are built fantastic businesses.
Totally. Well, you've built a great business. You have a growing office, new office construction happening.
Yes.
Things are moving and shaking. What's one thing that you wish you knew at the start of your career? I mean, you are where you are now, but if you could go back to young Mike and give him one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it would be the investment in yourself from an education standpoint. So probably a deeper dive into that. And quite honestly, my office is reflective of that reflection today. So when somebody comes on board that is brand new to the business, there is an education calendar that is a requisite of being here. And it's pretty significant. It is hours and hours and hours of additional time spent in study and growth, how to really take their business to a higher level quicker than you would probably expect from the rest of the industry. So that's the look back, but that's what exists today. Is investing more into oneself from the get go, and then the other thing would be delegation. Is delegating some of those things that I felt like, no, I need to do it all, and I don't need to do it all. In fact, delegation turns me loose and turns my brokers loose to do the things that they're best suited for, which is out serving people.
Totally, totally. Well, that's great. And I know that the Windermere offers a lot of great different learning tools, and you really help propel that forward in your office. And it shows in the growth since I started working with you guys about 2 years ago. So I've really seen that growth. It's incredible to watch.
Yeah, thank you. We work really hard.
And yeah, yeah, it's evident. So, your business is where it is today. It's growing, but what has been one of the hardest parts about growing your business to where it is today?
I think I think it's because I'm very very selective with regard to who comes on board, and my everyday walk through the door effort is to help people grow their businesses to a higher level or where they want to take their business. So I mean, the hard part is I'm picky, and it's so important. And you've been, Sophia, in our office meetings, and you see the collaboration that goes on. I just not everybody fits that bill. So that's probably the hardest part, but it's also the most enjoyable part because that's what I get to come to work to do every day is make best efforts to meet people and create relationships that may turn out to be team members in the office.
Right, right. Well, you guys have a great team there. Has there ever been a time where you just wanted to give up or something was extremely challenging and you've maybe walked away from it? Has there been a challenge like that for you in the growth of your business?
Um, I don't know that it was ever that I would give up or walk away. There was certainly a time during the Great Recession when I was doing anything and everything to cut costs, including janitorial. And I was here at 8 o'clock at night and had been there for 13 or 14 hours already. So that was a time where probably I wasn't my happiest, but in no way, shape, or form was I going to give up. In fact, if there was a hint of it, BJ probably turned to me and said, "Get your butt in gear. We can get through this thing."
Right. And you stuck to it and it's paid off and you're continuing to grow the business. And of course things can get challenging sometimes, but along the way, has there been anyone that's really helped you or maybe a few people along the way that you couldn't have done this without?
Yeah, I think about that quite a bit. And in fact, I talked to my son quite a bit about that. He's a professor at Indiana University along with his wife, and we talk about how people grow up and who affects them. And I think three different people, and I'll throw my parents into a category of one. They both provided a tremendous amount in. I've got two sisters. All of our upbringing to make sure we were doing life right and contribute back into the communities that we live in and the people we are around. My grandfather was really quite a influencer, if you will. I actually have had the blessing of living on both the west side of the Cascade Mountains in Washington State as well as the east side. My grandparents had a huge alfalfa cattle and apple operation over in eastern Washington. And so he was my daily mentor of getting me out of bed at 4:30 and 5 in the morning. And I mean, he was a pioneer in the Okanagan Valley and just very much influenced my life. And then, within the Windermere world, so many people. But one of my mentors was a fellow by the name of Don Riley. Don passed away a couple of years ago, but just an incredible influence on BJ and I. And I go back to that day when, or the time that you and I were talking about where we were doing janitorial at 8 o'clock at night. Don would call my cell phone at 8 o'clock at night to say hi, but he knew what I was doing. and it was just he was my supporter. He was there for BJ and I. So those three groups, I mean, countless other people as well, but those three groups of folks were pretty influential.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's incredible. That's incredible. So, well, the title of the podcast is Pacific Northwest Mike Check. So, what does the Pacific Northwest mean to you, and why is it named that? Can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess first and foremost, BJ and I are very Pacific Northwest. We both grew up here. Um, we both had the chance to travel a great deal throughout the United States, and every time we come back, and you wherever you're coming from, but you start approaching back into the Washington State, Seattle area, Oregon area, it's always kind of that refreshing. God, it's great to be back here. It's just great to be back home. But we do a lot of outdoor stuff. So whether we're in a rowing shell, which we still are today, BJ a little bit more than I, but whether we're in a rowing shell or up in the mountains, the beauty of the area is just it's unmatchable in so many ways. And there's some gorgeous areas of the world, right? But we do live in kind of a special area, and as busy as this area is right now, and it is busy, there are some great places to get away.
Totally. What are some of your favorite places to get away in the Pacific Northwest?
Oh, if you throw the entire Pacific Northwest in, I mean, we've got such close proximity to the Cascade Mountain Range. A little further away is the Olympic Mountain Range. But there's one special place for us, and it's actually up in British Columbia. And it's called the Bowen Lakes Provincial Park, and it's a journey. It's a canoe and backpack trip. It takes about 9 to 10 days out in the Canadian wilderness, and it's right at the tip of the Rocky Mountains, Canadian Rockies. It's called the Caribous at that point in time, but unbelievable beauty up there.
Wow. It sounds beautiful. And the Pacific Northwest, for anyone who hasn't been there, if you're listening, it's a beautiful part of the country and very green, very lush. And it's a incredible place. So we're very excited to talk more about that throughout this podcast.
Yeah.
So how do your values show up in your work?
Oh, that's a tough question. So I guess first, just showing up is important. I think I've got an incredible team. You've been around them, but showing up and being there for them, just in a leadership position is, I think, absolutely critical. One of the things that I experienced when I was fairly new to the business is I didn't have a lot of resource in terms of asking questions and getting answers. And what I found is if I don't have the answers to my questions, that stops me at that point in time from going on to what I need to do. So I think part of where my values show up is that understanding and need and expression of getting quick answers and getting the right answers so that they have forward momentum in whether it's putting that transaction together, getting a listing presentation ready, but it might even be something very confrontational. And one of the things that I ask my brokers is if they know something is kind of out there that could be a problem, let me know so I'm not blindsided if somebody gives me a call. And I'm very proactive in problem solving through those kind of environments. So I think that's probably where a lot of my values show up.
Mm-hmm. I know you also do a lot of work for the local community as well through Windermere, Kirkland, and maybe you can speak a little bit about the organizations you support locally as well.
Sure. So I guess the umbrella to everything in our philanthropic world is the Windermere Foundation, but one of the benefactors of foundation monies over the course of time is an organization. It used to be called Kirkland Interfaith Transitions in Housing, KITH for short, but now it is called Attain Housing. And BJ and I have been supporters of Attain Housing for a lot of years, primarily just they are so efficient and so heartfelt as they reach out to homeless families and families in need. the results are exemplary. And a lot of folks out there locally, a company called Merit Homes, a gentleman by the name of Josh Lyson, is equally invested in Attain. And again, just such an important element with our current homeless environment and bringing people off the street and getting them on their feet.
Yeah, they're an incredible organization. And if anyone listening has a chance to check out their Business Heroes campaign that's going on right now, they're raising money. And actually, We Are Kirkland, your office is a part of that, as well as Merit Homes. So a lot of the local businesses coming together to be business heroes in the community. So it's great to see that community involvement. And that's what makes Kirkland so great. It's a community, and it's one that is exciting to be a part of.
It really is, from the Chamber of Commerce to the Kirkland Downtown Association. I mean, there's just a lot of strength, and especially during these times when retail and hospitality is suffering so much, they stepped up huge, as did a lot of communities, right? But they stepped up huge. They created a growth fund or a recovery fund, better said, for local businesses. Really an amazing group.
Totally, totally. Well, my last question for you is, if you were in my shoes, what other questions would you have asked yourself?
I think if I were in your shoes, I would ask me, Mike, what's next? And
all right, what's next, Mike?
So, well, the one thing that I found in putting this new office building together, so you put that our culture in and around that description of that office building. We didn't just build a building; we built a building for our culture, and I like that a lot. But the one thing that I found is I really have enjoyed watching that construction take place, and we've got an incredible team from general contractor, project manager, architect, and it has been a very, very team-oriented event. So, and BJ and I have kind of split the duties. She has worked an awful lot on interior design, some of the lighting that's going into play. I'm kind of sitting on the side of working with the banker and general contractor. But all that being said, we've got a great delegation of duties, and we thought, why can't we do something like this again? So kind of a what's next, along with running a busy real estate company, is we've got a piece of property in Issaquah that we'll probably redevelop at some point in time. And we've got a few other things in mind, but that's probably a what's next for BJ and I.
Wow, it sounds like you guys have nothing going on, have a lot of free time on your hands.
Nothing to do but having fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And if anyone wants to check out some of those videos of the office construction and other pictures of the new building being built, you can check out our social media pages and find that there. And it's really cool to see it throughout the time, growing. It's like literally growing before our eyes. And it's really exciting that you guys are going to grow with it. With the physical building, your team is growing, and sounds like you have a lot of exciting stuff planned and up ahead. And thank you for, answering all of our questions. I do actually have one more question for you, and it's a question that we'll ask all of our guests on this show. So if you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
What would it be? Well, I would be in serious trouble if I did not say "As Time Goes By." That is a song out of the movie Casablanca, and for BJ and I, that was kind of our song. We of course love that movie, but I'd have to say "As Time Goes By."
Great song, song. Well, that concludes the question portion of the podcast. And I would like to introduce another segment that we'll have on every podcast called the Mike Check. So during this segment, Mike will actually be sharing a piece of advice for listeners, whether that is something real estate related, business related, lifestyle. So what is your Mike Check for today, Mike?
Well, my big Mike Check today, Sophia, is I over the course of time, I've had a lot of goals that I have set out there, and I've accomplished a lot of them. And I still have several on the radar screen. But what I've found is things don't necessarily fall in place into the time and calendar that I have set. So patience and consistency have really got me to where I have gotten in my goals and in achieving my goals. So patience is a big virtue, and in fact, I talk to my folks about, at least within our industry, the three P's that are really important to remember, and that's people, places, and patience. It doesn't necessarily happen when you plan them to happen.
Right. People, places, and patience. That's great. That's some great advice that I can apply to my day starting right now.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, the last segment that we actually won't be answering any questions today, but the last segment of our podcast is actually called Open Mic. And so, what we want to do is allow listeners to actually ask questions for Mike or any upcoming guests coming onto the show. So, the way you can do that is to leave a comment on our YouTube channel with your questions for Mike. We will be doing this podcast once a month. So we'll look through the questions and answer any questions you have on future podcasts during that segment. So that's all I have for you today, Mike. It was great getting to know a little bit more about your story. Really looking forward to diving deep in all aspects of business and real estate through this podcast with you and all of our guests that are coming on in the future.
And can I mention who's coming on next, Sophia?
Totally, yeah.
Okay, so for you in the state of Washington, if you're in the real estate business and you're a part of Northwest Multiple Listing Service, you'll get to meet Tom Hurdlebrink, who's the executive officer of Northwest Multiple Listing Service, and a gentleman that I've learned a lot from and spent a lot of time with. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. That'll be really exciting. So yeah, ask any questions you have for Tom or Mike on this YouTube video for our next podcast. Awesome.
Great.
Well,
Sophia, thank you so much for moderating this, and we're going to have a lot of fun down the road.
totally. Thank you to all of our listeners, and tune in next month for podcast number 2.
Thank you for listening to Pacific Northwest Mike Check. Tune in every first Wednesday of the month to learn something new about real estate, business, and life.